There is a specific kind of grief that English does not have a word for. The Japanese call it amai, the pain of a trust so complete, so foundational that it never occurs to you to question it. Helen Marsh's life was built on two uncontested pillars. She had been married to her husband, Gary, for 27 years, and she had been best friends with Susan for 32. They were the people who knew her best. The disruption of that reality arrived on a very ordinary Wednesday morning in October. Gary left for work. Helen poured her second cup, and her phone rang. Susan. The phone call lasted for exactly 23 minutes. Helen did not speak a single word for 21 of them. Susan used that time to explain that she and Gary had been in a relationship. It began in 2015. They had carried on a hidden life together for 8 years. But the detail that made the confession so disorienting was that the affair was already over. It had ended a full 12 months earlier.
And it was ended by Susan, not Gary. Helen did not stumble upon a secret text message or a hidden receipt. The betrayal was voluntarily handed to her because Susan believed Helen deserved to know. That decision forces a strange collision. The victim must simultaneously process an enormous, devastating deception alongside the radical honesty of its delivery. After hanging up, Helen sat at her kitchen table in total stillness. She stayed there for exactly 47 minutes. Then she stood up, rinsed her coffee cup, and called her daughter. That evening, Gary came home to an unlit living room. Helen did not shout. She chose the quiet deliberately, using the silence to extract cold, unvarnished facts rather than performing her rage. Gary offered zero resistance. He did not deny the 8 years. He admitted that he couldn't fully explain it himself, and he told her he felt he had destroyed everything that mattered. By refusing to fight and immediately retreating to the guest room, Gary removed the traditional target for Helen's anger. There was no enemy left to argue with. She was simply left alone to evaluate the physical remnants of her life. Helen sought out a therapist named Dr. Karen Walsh. The work they did centered on an exhausting psychological state, the grueling necessity of holding deep love, furious grief, and cold logic for the same two people at the exact same time. This chart visualizes the first calculation Helen had to make. We can call it the Gary question. The solid base represents a 27-year marriage. The contrasting timeline is an 8-year parallel reality. Helen had to determine if the original, foundational structure of the marriage could physically bear the weight of that massive contradiction. Then there was the Susan question. The relationship ended entirely, leaving a 12-month gap of silence. Then came the confession. There is no psychological protocol for how to handle a best friend who voluntarily burns down your life in the name of telling you the truth. Helen spent the winter on long, solitary walks. She's used the physical movement and the isolation to process the two questions slowly, refusing to demand immediate answers from herself. Surviving a double betrayal requires splitting your grief onto two entirely separate tracks. The math you use to evaluate the ruin of a marriage simply does not apply to the destruction of a 32-year friendship. By the spring, Helen made her choice regarding Gary. She chose to stay. The decision was based entirely on the consistent, quiet presence of a man who waited in the guest room for 4 months without demanding a resolution. The immediate cost of that choice was 12 months of intensive couples therapy. The result is a marriage that is significantly harder to navigate, but far more honest. On the Susan timeline, the estrangement was physical. 6 weeks after the phone call, Susan sent a 4-page handwritten letter. Helen placed it in a drawer and left it entirely unread for 11 months. The following September, Helen opened the drawer, read the letter, and wrote a measured response. She acknowledged the truth of what Susan told her, but she did not grant a resumption of their friendship. True resolution in the aftermath of a catastrophe rarely looks like a dramatic refusal to forgive or a tearful reconciliation. It often looks like a cold, pragmatic acknowledgement that the scars are permanent. Today, 4 years have passed since the Wednesday morning call. Helen and Gary are still together in their altered marriage. Helen and Susan have managed exactly 4 careful conversations in 4 years. Helen's definition of forgiveness has evolved.
She doesn't view it as a final destination or even a particularly useful word. She sees it as the ongoing condition of remaining in the same room with the people who hurt you. She accepts that deciphering the complete truth of what happened and why is a task she will likely be working on for the rest of her life. Dignity after total destruction isn't found in walking away cleanly. It comes from recognizing that doing the hard, painful work of living in the ruins is a victory in itself.